Ember.
Ember is the queen.
What's up, Ember?
I see you, Ember.
I only have eyes for Ember.
But hey, Ember is hot. Hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday. If it is Tuesday for you, some of you are in the future, some of you are watching later. Either way, hello, future people. Please take a second to hit the subscribe button and join us every weekday at 11 a.m. Eastern U.S. time as we do deep dives every dang day. Now, I always start the show with a little bit of random announcements and things, and today it's very brief, but I want to keep you all appraised as we do things in real time around here. The non-binary flag is live with the whole collection of Space Pride flags in both flag and sticker form. I'm still working on more. I'm still adding more, but the non-binary flag is the new one, and that is still available. Well, it's now available, rather. I just put it up last night, so yay. And if you don't know where to find those, the easiest way is, of course, go to betterthanumber.com and click on the store tab. There's also a bunch of other useful stuff on that website, not just my links and things, but also science things and other creators and a bunch of other stuff. You might find it useful. So, share that website with friends and things. And if you also want to share the flags and stickers, I'm working on a sort of test micro sponsorship deal. As you all know, I'm very, very poor. But when those things sell, I make a little bit of money. And so I'm trying to help sponsor other channels so that they use a discount code. Their viewers get a percentage off, and then they make a little bit of money too. And then I make more money than I would have, and they make some money. And so if you know a creator who's interested in that sort of thing and might want to help promote some gloriously delightful space propaganda, flags and stickers, have them bug me. Hooray. Good news for everybody. All right. Thank you all so much for joining. I see a bunch of cool people were here before we even got started. Right-handed Sith, of course, sneaking into the chat. Triceratops. Rebecca Solnit. That's right. Eric Wanders here. And Lilivol Trades getting in a super chat before we even begin, sending us $2. Thank you, Lil. And says, all hail the Empress. I mean, there are worse things you could do with your with your time. Weed Bro, hello. Good to see you. Jess is here all the way from the asteroid. All kind kiwi banana. There's a couple of kiwis. My apologies. Oh, goodness. Sapphire's here. Spooky. Let me tell you what mansplaining really is, Ember. Right? It's all good. And JJ, hello. And hello, everybody else I didn't catch. I don't know if the chat catches everybody, and there's a lot of people who lurk and such. It looks like it's just me so far today. Some of our co-hosts may pop in. One never knows. But for right now, let's get started. So, mansplaining. What the hell is mansplaining? Well, good news. We have an actual article from Psychology Today to explain it to us, which I find very funny. I mean, obviously go to good sources, but having them tell us it's fine. I'm just over here doing my thing. So Psychology Today. Yes. Ryan, hello. If you're vibing with this, tap the like. Yes, please do hit the buttons. All the buttons. Any button you can hit, it helps. I appreciate it. Tommy, hello. Excited to learn what this is. Yes. Oh, good. Okay. Psychology Today. This is an article from 2016 because this term has been around. We're doing the 10-year anniversary, apparently. It's a whole thing. Actually, Rebecca's original article was a little bit before that, but it blew up in the early 2010s, and it's yeah. So the article is titled The Psychology of Mansplaining, because it is in fact Psychology Today. And full disclosure, I am slightly more in favor of this source than others because I've written articles for them, so I tend to trust them a little bit more, but I think overall they're still pretty reliable and mostly focused on psychology. So, hooray. All right. In a recent interview back in 2016 of Jimmy Kimmel Live, Kimmel mansplains the art of political speech to then presidential candidate Hillary Clinton. He begins by mansplaining the concept of mansplaining. Of course he does. Kimmel says, "Are you familiar with mansplaining? You know what that is?" And Hillary replies, "That's when a man explains something to a woman in a patronizing way." And Kimmel replies, "Actually, it's when a man explains something to a woman in a condescending way, but you were close." Which is sort of perfect. Kimmel goes on to interrupt Clinton frequently, offering contradictory and sexist advice. Of course, he and Clinton were intentionally parodying the phenomena of mansplaining, but it reminded me, the author, of a conversation I'd actually had the day before. A man, just a man, not nameless person, it's a man, says, "How do you calculate the area of a triangle?" The author says, "Length times width." The man says, "No, base times height." Oh, how dare, how dare. In retrospect, my answer should have been that. Of course, I know that. I've taken several advanced calculus courses and I teach statistics. And who is he to quiz my basic geometry knowledge anyway? Now, they're missing a step. It's not important to the article, but pedants out there are with me that it's frustrating. It's a needle in the brain that there's a step missing. So I feel you. I'm right there with you. Taken together, the Kimmel-Clinton skit and my own experience piqued my interest in mansplaining more generally. The term has only been around since 2008, according to citation Rothman 2012, even though you could just cite the article that it came from, but never mind. But it has attracted a great deal of popular attention, making the long list as contender for Oxford's Word of the Year, a citation from another source instead of Oxford, it's just funny. It's so funny to me. And the short list in the American Dialect Society's most creative category with another citation. According to the Oxford English Dictionary editors, mansplaining is to explain something to someone, typically a man to a woman, in a manner regarded as condescending or patronizing. Citation. The American Dialect Society defines it as when a man condescendingly explains something to female listeners. Citation. Lily Rothman, in her Cultural History of Mansplaining, elaborates it as explaining without regard to the fact that the explainee knows more than the explainer, often done by a man to a woman. And these are all important points. Like in order to be proper brand name mansplaining, it has to involve that condescension or patronizing attitude. But it makes it like extra mansplaining if you have all the criteria and you're explaining something wrong to a person who knows more about it than you do, which is one of the things that makes Rebecca Solnit's original essay such a fucking firework, because that's exactly the experience so many people had, and she gave us a term for it. Yes, as Tommy says, otherwise it's just sparkling condescension. Yes. Oh, goodness. Mansplaining is, as a portmanteau, may be new, but the behavior has been around for centuries. Citation. The scholarly literature has long documented gendered power differences in verbal interaction. Men are more likely to interrupt, particularly in an intrusive manner. Citation. However, I would like to point out, not only is this a rather old study, but most studies from this time have several baked-in biases. If you, say, for example, make a study of live broadcasting now, you go to, say, panel shows, like, say, you look at something like Piers Morgan, you'll find that while Piers interrupts more than anyone because he's an asshole, the right-wing women guests he has on all the time interrupt the other guests more than the other guests interrupt them. It's, I don't know. There's a lot to it. The point is there's nuance. I know Americans hate nuance, but there's nuance here. Compared to men, women are more likely to be interrupted, both by men and by other women. Another citation. Perhaps in part because they are accustomed to it, women also respond more amenably to interruption than men do. being more likely to smile, nod, agree, laugh, or otherwise facilitate the conversation. Citation. And there's some truth to that. Like, when you get interrupted a lot, you could make a big stink about it and then get accused of derailing the entire discussion, or you can take one of two primary options. You can either just roll with it and respond to the interruption and then lead back around to the thing you were in the middle of saying, or you could just ignore the interruption, pretend it didn't happen, just like a child who has misbehaved, and resume saying what you were saying, which is kind of a boss move. It's a little bit dickish, but it really highlights how rude it was for the other person to interrupt. I don't suggest doing that a lot, because the person you do that to is going to feel ashamed, and instead of doing better, they're going to blame you. But it's pretty effective when you do need to pull that one out. Oh, let's see. Interruptions matter. They are linked to social power. In dyadic interactions, the more powerful partner is more likely to interrupt. Citation. Unfortunately, researchers have tended to focus on easily quantifiable aspects of quantifiable, my tongue skipped a thing there, quantifiable aspects of speech rather than the content of speech. And that's another factor too, is there's this tendency, and it's still, I don't have a citation for this because I haven't written this down. I'm just giving you what's in my head. There is still a tendency for people to talk for the sake of dominating the conversation rather than because they have something to say. You'll get people who will repeat themselves a lot. They'll throw in a ton of ums and ahs and so's just so that they're still talking. Now, sometimes this is a response to having been interrupted a lot in the past. It becomes a habit to just keep making noise so other people don't try to snipe in on the conversation. But other times they do it to keep others out of the conversation. It's a fascinating phenomenon, but it's frustrating as hell. More research is needed to ascertain the extent to which the condescension mansplaining posits is indeed common and gendered, directed disproportionately by men toward women. And in fairness, it's true. We all can think of cases where a woman has mansplained something. It doesn't necessarily have to be a man doing it. It's just far more common to be observed coming from men. But of course, we have to caveat that and say to be observed coming from men, not that it necessarily does come from men, because we have to be careful of our own biases, right? Like if we expect mansplaining from men, when we see it from men, we go, aha. It's like when you think of a yellow car and you're driving on the road, you're more likely to spot more yellow cars. Whereas if you don't think of a yellow car, then they're just cars and they blend into the background. So it's that almost a sharpshooter fallacy effect. Like you see the thing you're looking for and you point at it and go, aha, and you disregard all the other things that might otherwise be applicable, So it's a thing to watch out for. Mansplaining is problematic because the behavior itself reinforces gender inequality. When a man explains something to a woman in a patronizing or condescending way, he reinforces gender stereotypes about women's presumed lesser knowledge and intellectual ability. It's partly that, but it's also partly the authority thing. It's man talking, woman listen, It's often more about the authority than the presumed lesser knowledge. Although we can't rule that out entirely too. This is especially true when the woman is, in fact, more knowledgeable on the subject. This aspect of mansplaining was central to the Kimmel-Clinton parody because clearly Clinton has greater expertise on giving political speeches. By quite a lot. It's also evident in Rebecca Solnit's tale of a man trying to explain her own book to her despite not having read it himself. It was her essay, Men Explain Things to Me, and the subsequent book that many credit for sparking the dialogue that ultimately generated the term mansplaining. To my knowledge, Solnit herself did not use the word. It's a portmanteau of the title, Men Explain Things to Me. Men explain, mansplain. Yes, it's culture. It's culture generating stuff out of other people's ideas. That's what culture do. especially in recent years. Having had numerous men explain gender to me, both in a general sense and as it relates to my own research, I can sympathize with Soulmate. I can relate as well. I mean, again, we've all been mansplained to by men, by women, by NBs even. But when there's a certain flavor to it, when a very arrogant, broad, projecting, intimidating man condescendingly explains to you your own work, not realizing he's getting it wrong, he never read it, and you're the author. It's a peak experience. Everyone should try it. But mansplaining is also problematic in the gender stereotypic assumptions it makes about men. Citation: Miss Andre doesn't promote equality, nor does it undermine misogyny. Yes, mansplaining is sexist and boorish, but the term isn't fair to the many men who support gender equality and don't mansplain. Well, I don't know that that's necessarily true, because that's like saying racism isn't fair to the white people who don't behave in a racist fashion. Well, then it doesn't apply to them, does it? Moreover, men don't have a monopoly on arrogance or condescension. Women are quite capable of both. However, it's worth noting that when women display arrogance or condescension, it's more often directed at other women than at men because of sexism. It's like, for example, Pam Bondi. You'll see her snark at women reporters all day long, but she'll lick Trump's boots till the end of time. She's afraid of men, but will bite the heads off of women. Mansplaining has caught the popular imagination because it provides a label for a common and offensive social reality. Women are often assumed to be ignorant and unintelligent, at least compared to men. Now this, I can't imagine how this could possibly be relevant today in the year of our Lord of Noodly Goodness, 2026, when there's men with real political power taking the stage to say that men are superior to women in all things, apparently including childbirth. I don't know. It's wild. Having a label for something is useful in that it makes it more visible. It makes it easier to communicate. Like just this morning, randomly. I know, tangents. People come here for the tangents. We come for the tangents, we stay for the science. This morning, I randomly came across a post from Brianna Wu. Gag me with a spoon. She was complaining about how non-binary people aren't male to female or female to male. They're one of those two trans. She actually said male to trans, but that's because she's forgetting that non-binaries come from the other direction as well. And I felt like, despite all the wrong things she said in her random bootlicking, right-wing adjacent brain-dead post, she did get right that non-binary people are also trans. So I don't know if she's changed her position on that or if she accidentally let some facts slip in her bullshit salad, but there's that. Having terminology makes people visible, makes people able to talk about things. How many trans people have we heard from in the last several years who tried to convey being trans when they were younger, but because they didn't have the word for it that other people could understand, they couldn't convey the information? Like, you can only tell the adults around you, I'm a girl or I'm a boy, so many times before you're like, I don't know how to be more clear with these people. And then once you come across the term trans, aha, now you can use that word and either they go, huh? Or the light bulb goes off and they go, oh, now I understand what you've been trying to say this whole fucking time. Having terminology helps a lot. So it makes it more visible, potentially working to erode both the behavior and the sexist assumptions that drive it. But it risks becoming a means of trivializing mansplaining. Oh, it become a meme. Oh, no. And not worthy of real outrage and of degrading men generally. Citation. And of course, be sure to check out my website. And you should check out my website because it has all my links, including the store, the merch, the socials, the other things, and also the original reconstituted and upgraded pride flag. It's right there on the front page. You can get the high res version as a PNG for like your background or phone lock screen or whatever. It's right there. It's the image is free because I wanted to follow in the footsteps of Rachel Lenz and make it publicly available. But if you want it as a flag, we can do that too. Plus, there's all the other flags. But there's also ways to support the channel. You can do that too. There's all the YouTube buttons, and those are great. But there's also Patreon, which takes a lot less than YouTube does. One-time options, all kinds of things. And that's just the front page. There's also fundraisers to help people, going through some shit. The gender science that I often cite, resources for GSM people, and of course, the list of creators, including all the people who occasionally pop in on the show. There's a bunch of cool stuff up there. So I hope you take advantage. You head over to the website and also support what I'm doing. It helps. It helps ever so much. All right. So now all this started with Rebecca Solnit. Cool. Let's find out a little bit about Rebecca Solnit after this short break. Let's do the obligatory one and let's hydrate first, shall we? Hey folks, I've been working hard on my health, and so far I've lost over 140 pounds. A huge part of good health is hydration. That's why I'm thrilled to partner with Epic Water Filters. Check this out. Not only can you say goodbye to expensive bottled water, but these filters are made in the US, so no tariffs, and they're made to fit your life. From these lovely pitchers I can fill from, to sink units, to portable filters that fit in your reusable bottle. With Epic, I can refill from nature's water sources and not have to worry about bacteria and whatnot. But also, send back a used filter to be responsibly recycled and they'll send you a free replacement, saving you and the earth even more. Want to save a ton of money, be healthier, and build a better world? Head to epicwaterfilters.com and enter code EMBER15 at checkout for 15% off. Don't settle for random water. Upgrade to Epic. All right. I hope y'all took the opportunity to hydrate and I have longer breaks. We'll get to the. I don't have anything long enough for me to go refill my coffee. It takes like 4 minutes, but whatever. There'll be more breaks later. Yes, intermissions are a very, very wonderful thing. It turns out. Okay. Bree says I've been inspired. I'm partnering with Epic Vodka Filter. All right. So who's Rebecca Solnit? What's going on here? Oh, but wait. But first, shenaniganery. Jester, Lord of Shenaniganery, has sent us a super chat for $2. Thank you, Jester. And says, actually, mansplaining is me super chatting. Okay, fam. Well, now we've got a real definition. All right. Who's Rebecca Solnit? Rebecca Solnit's experiences of sexism became the inspiration for both her 2014 book, Men Explain Things to Me, and a popular term, mansplaining. Miserable at school, Solnit took a GED in 10th grade. I wish I had known about GEDs. I seriously, people are like, but Ember, how could you consider dropping out of high school? Because it doesn't make a difference. I was wasting my time in high school. I had so many teachers tell me I don't have anything to teach you. And that's not to brag. That's just to explain that I was miserable because it was wasting my time. I wanted to go home and read freaking, 204 space geology books. Fuck, I am not making myself look good with that one. I didn't know there was such a thing as a GED where you could drop out and then get into college anyway. Because it doesn't make a difference whether you have a GED or a formal high school diploma or a Regents High Honors high school diploma with all the bells and whistles from a New York school. Colleges look at them the same. So yeah, I just wasted 2 years of my life learning stuff I already fucking knew and couldn't learn more things. So I get it. I was frustrated too. I could have I could have started school 2 years sooner. I could have like hit my student loan cap 2 years earlier. It's yeah. So she took a GED in 10th grade and began studying at a junior college. She did what I wanted to do. She saved time. Then studied in Paris before graduating from San Francisco State University. Oh, she went to Paris. I'm so jelly. I'll save that tangent for another time. She earned a master's degree in journalism from the University of California, Berkeley, in 1984 and began her writing career, becoming a frequent contributor to The Guardian, before it was taken over by bigots and right-wing neoconservative march to the red flag and make the Elon salute groups, and Harper's Magazine. She published her first book, Secret Exhibition: 6 California Artists of the Cold War Era, in 1990, which is an interesting book because, first of all, the idea of secret exhibitions is compelling. What does it mean? Are these artists like hiding their works? Are they pulling a Banksy and they're like dropping murals that no one knows about? Like what does it mean? But also, artists of the Cold War era, California artists of the Cold War era. That feels like a coffee table book that you might find in like a doctor's lounge or something. Like, who's buying this book? Who is this for? How many copies are you likely to sell? And so who's agreed to publish it? Because my goodness, it's kind of how good is this book that, despite the fact it sounds like a coffee table book that's going to sell maybe 12 copies, a publisher decided to publish it. They went, oh no, this is good. I need to publish this anyway. Maybe we'll even promote it, How does that happen? That sounds like a very interesting story to me as well. But also, I want to know about the secret exhibitions. Anyway, as of 2023, she's written 20 books and collaborated on several more. Solnit and her books have won many awards, including the National Book Critics Circle Award for her 2004 book, River of Shadows, Edward Maybridge, and the Technological Wild West, which I must confess I have not read. But I know a little bit about Maybridge, and he's fascinating. He revolutionized photography, like, for the world, but also he was Ansel Adams to the Cowboys of the Wild West kind of thing. It's a hell of a story. So maybe I will read the book at some point. I have a long list of books waiting to be read, though. I'm still working through Dr. Kipps. We're doing our best here, folks. Okay, let's see. 2018 Kirkus Prize for Nonfiction for Call Them by Their True Names, American Crises, and the 2019 Wyndham Campbell Literature Prize in Nonfiction. At a cocktail party, a stranger who had heard she had just written a book on Maybridge proceeded to lecture her about an important book written on the subject, completely unaware it was her own work. The incident sparked Solnit's 2008 essay and 2014 collection discussing what would later be called mansplaining and gaslighting. Now, that's another term that's extremely useful for the same reason. It lets you have a way to communicate a specific thing that you've been trying to relate to people and they're just not getting, or they're telling you that you don't know what you're talking about and you're remembering things wrong. That never happens. Her most recent book, as of 2023, is Waking Beauty. Alongside Solnit's writing career, she's worked as an activist for environmentalism, women's rights, and human rights. We can relate. Most of us here can relate on a lot of those. In 2023, she launched the climate project Not Too Late with Thelma Young Lutuna Batua. But I fucked it up. I'm an American. I can't pronounce things. My apologies. An effort to distribute climate information and resources to spur individual hope and change. Hope and change, a thing we very much need to see more of again. People made fun of us for that during the Obama years, but like after Obama, things got kind of dark, didn't they? C'est la vie. Theo says, isn't gaslighting something else? Blaming for something you actually did. So the term actually comes from a movie, or possibly the book the movie was based on. Something, I haven't seen the movie either, but in the old days, they used to use gas lights before electric lights. You may remember from elementary school, teachers would just say, before Thomas Edison invented the electric light, everyone was just in the dark all night, as if fire had never been invented. It's wild. No, in the 19th century and before, they used natural gas piped in through lines, and you would light it like a lantern. There were also hurricane lamps that ran on oil and things, but even back then, whale oil was kind of expensive, and only people who either needed it or had more easy access to it than gas used it. So you had built into your walls gas lanterns. This is why there were so many theater fires back in the day, because the stage lights were also run by natural gas. And if the flame goes out and the gas builds up and another flame catches it, boom, your theater explodes. It's a bad time. If a flame went out and your place didn't blow up, then you could asphyxiate, just like today. That's why we added the scent of eggs to our natural gas, partly so you know there's a gas leak, so you don't light a match and blow yourself up, but also partly because you can asphyxiate on this otherwise scentless gas. If you partially asphyxiate, then you're prone to hallucination. Hypoxia can bring on hallucinations. And so if you said something to a person that they wanted to pretend you had just dreamed up, they wanted to convince you that memory wasn't a real memory, they would tell you your gaslight must have gone out, and you hallucinated that. So that's where that term comes from. But what it means in the modern vernacular, as I understand it, is when a person tells you your real experiences aren't real, and you need to doubt your own memory, not the person abusing you about their abuse. Ask me how I know about that. Holy shit. Anyway, this tangent brought to you by random 19th century history or something. All right, let's move on to what Rebecca herself has to say. Because, of course, we've seen her essay before, and it's a fabulous essay. But let's try another take on it and see where this goes. All right, so here we are on another thing I can't pronounce because I'm from the United States, Guernica magazine, I reckon. 2012, so we're time traveling again. We're going way back. Before there was Mansplaining, there was Rebecca Solnit's 2008 critique of male arrogance, reprinted here with a new introduction by Rebecca Solnit. And yeah, there she is, looking like, the fuck did you just say to me? I love it. One evening over dinner, I began to joke, as I often had before, about writing an essay called Men Explain Things to Me. Every writer has a stable of ideas that never make it to the racetrack. I'd been trotting this pony out recreationally every once in a while. My house guest, the brilliant theorist and activist Marina Citrin, insisted that I had to write it down because people like her younger sister Sam needed to read it. Young women needed to know that being belittled wasn't the result of their own secret failings. It was the boring old gender wars. So, lovely, immeasurably valuable Sam, this one always was for you in particular. It wanted to be written. It was restless for the racetrack. It galloped along once I sat down at the computer, and since Marina slept in later than me in those days, I served it for breakfast and sent it to Tom later that day. That was in April in 2008, and it struck a chord. It still seems to get reposted more than just about anything I've written at tomdispatch.com and prompted some very funny letters to the site. None was more astonishing than the one from the Indianapolis man who wrote in to tell me that he had never personally or professionally shortchanged a woman, and went on to berate me for not hanging out with more regular guys, or at least do a little homework first. He gave me some advice about how to run my life, and then commented on my feelings of inferiority. He thought that being patronized was an experience a woman chooses to, or could choose not to have, and so the fault was all mine. Life is short. I didn't write back. Young women subsequently added the word mansplaining to the lexicon. Though I hasten to add that the essay makes it clear mansplaining is not a universal flaw of the gender, just the intersection between overconfidence and cluelessness where some portion of that gender gets stuck. The battle for women to be treated like human beings with rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of involvement in cultural and political arenas continues, and it is sometimes a pretty grim battle. When I wrote the essay below, I surprised myself in seeing that what starts out as a minor social misery can expand into violent silencing and even violent death. Last year's Nobel Peace Prize went to women, 2 Liberians and a Yemeni, for their nonviolent struggle for the safety of women and for women's rights to full participation in peace-building work, which is to say that safety and full participation is only a goal. This is a struggle that takes place in war-torn nations, but also in the bedroom, the dining room, the classroom, the workplace, and the streets, in newspapers, magazines, and televisions, where women are dramatically underrepresented. Even in the online gaming arena, women face furious harassment and threats of assault simply for daring to participate. That, of course, is a reference to Gamergate for those of you who either are too young, because we are at that point where some people are too young to remember Gamergate, or because of the crazy amount of constant trauma we've had for the past 10 years or so, have forgotten. That's mostly symbolic violence. Real violence, the most extreme form of silencing and destroying rights, takes a far more dire toll in this country where domestic violence accounts for 30% of all homicides of women, annually creates about 2 million injuries, and prompts 18.5 million mental health care visits. It's in Kairos Tahrir Square 2, brutal gender violence, where freedom and democracy have been claimed. Having the right to show up and speak are basic to survival, to dignity, and to liberty. I'm grateful that after an early life of being silenced, sometimes violently, I grew up to have a voice, circumstances that will always bind me to the rights of the voiceless. Y'all starting to see why we're doing this? Are you getting the message? I know most of you are already on board with the message, but I think this isn't just about a funny niche culture term. And that's the end of her introduction. Now, she does list the actual article. It is in here, and we will get to it in a little bit. But first, I wanted to give, I found an interview that she gave, or a talk, rather, at a public library. I guess it was for a book signing or something. And it's not a major event. It's not a TED Talk with thousands of people. It's just a talk. And I thought that might be interesting for us to watch together. Because I do just keep on digging. When I start doing my diving, I dig and I dig until it's showtime, basically. All right, so let's see what's going on.
Thank you. Am I audible back there? Wow, the man way in the back is giving me a thumbs up. It's so lovely to be back at one of the best bookstores in the whole world. I was thinking on the way over here that I probably haven't written a single book, and I think this one's number 16, that hasn't involved research at Moe's, browsing at Moe's, things that have fed my imagination at Moe's, all four.
Okay, so this is like her local library or possibly a bookstore, although it looks like a library to me.
4 floors. So it's really wonderful to be back at Moe's and to see my friend Summer living up to her name in the middle, and my fabulous students Amruta and Gabriella from UC Berkeley in the back.
Bree says, can you boost her audio? Burst her audio. I cannot. She is at maximum. It's very soft. I probably should have downloaded this, edited it, boosted the audio. I have to do that so often, it blows my mind. How many videos are posted on YouTube? Way too soft. And I say this to every creator that I can reach. Make them too loud. We can turn down our sound to whatever level is comfortable. Don't be, I'm afraid to make it too loud. If you're too soft, we can only boost the volume so high. Everything has a maximum. We can always lower it. So don't be afraid. Make it as loud as you think, as loud as you want, and then make it 2 decibels louder. Please.
So this book has had a funny history. I wrote an essay very casually. The great writer Marina Citrin was staying with me. She'd kind of taken refuge with me from a marital breakup. And the first evening she got really cheerful and a bottle of wine was involved. I started regaling her and my brother David with half jokingly with this proposal that I was going to write something someday called Men Explain Things to Me, and just started telling stories. And Marina looked at me very intently through the red wine and said, "You need to write that down, because young women like my sister need to know that the problem isn't them. This happens to women all the time and they need to know it."
Now I'm curious if this talk came before or after the introduction we just read. Like, is the one based on remembering the other?
And I, at that time, had a house where, like, you're either in my bedroom or you're in the other big room. It was very big, but it was a 2-room attic. And so Marina slept in later than me those days. So I served her Men Explain Things to me for breakfast, and then tried to figure out what to do with it. And of course, like most of the essays that I feel most strongly about, the political essays over the past dozen years, it went to Tom Engelhardt at Tom Dispatch. And then it went out, and I'd gotten a bit used to, in the 5 years at that point, it's so warm here, at
It's random interjections and tangents. It's super relatable. I mean, I know I never do random interjections and tangents. Like, oh God, it's so warm. Or I have to take a break to turn the heater down. You know, that never, ever happens. Now I'm curious what Tom Dispatch is, because I've seen that mentioned twice, both from her, but like, is that a way for writers to like write things easier? I don't know. It says it's a regular antidote to the mainstream media. Well, okay, so I know Rebecca is not a right-wing conspiracist. She's definitely not. So, but we hear, you know, the mainstream media being a pejorative mostly on the right. Lately, we've started to hear it as a more neutral kind of thing, because the right controls the mainstream media. There is no neutral media anymore. It's all owned by the oligarchs. But is that new? Like, what are we doing here? So yeah, it's I'll take a look around another time. I'm not gonna like detour you guys entirely on this thing. I just wanted to see what was here. But it looks like, you know, there's books, there's articles, it looks like a news page. So yeah, possibly some interesting stuff here.
Heat wave book TV people who are filming heat wave in the Bay Area, climate change alert, and so and I'd gotten used to the fact that Tom Dispatch really reaches people, but of everything I've ever put out online, nothing's ever had the life that Men Explain Things do. Has it reached so many people? It kept circulating. I don't think a week's gone by in the last few years that I haven't heard about it from somebody, seen it recirculated, quoted, referenced, etc. I am falsely credited with coining the term mansplaining. How many of you have heard the word mansplaining? How many of you haven't heard the word mansplaining?
Take the credit, ma'am. My goodness. That is an interesting question, though. Like, we know she popularized the concept that gave rise to the term, but she didn't actually coin the term. Let's see if internet sleuths have figured out who actually coined it. Term mansplaining. Okay. Google's just saying inspired by Rebecca Solnit. Well, yes, we know, but who coined it? The Guardian reports that the word was coined by an anonymous person in response to the essay Men Explain Things to Me. But I don't know, but it's the internet. So people do make anonymous comments. I wish we had like a screenshot of where it came from. I don't know. Just a random curiosity. I get curious about things, as you know.
Really? Wow. It's like 50-50. I thought the word was like, that it was a virus everybody had caught by now. But I was the New York Times 2010 Word of the Year.
Deviant says, take the credit, ma'am, Ember says, without acknowledging the irony of her saying that to another woman. Sigh, Ember, what am I to do with you? Well, you'll just have to come back on the show and try to set me right again. And on that note, Deviant will be back on the show next Monday to talk about, I'm going to mispronounce it, as you know, Hatshepsut. We're going to get pharaonic to kick off Women's History Month. Oh, yes. The Queen Pharaoh with the Queen of Egypt studies. It'll be great. I hope you join us. And if you're down for deep dives every single day, well, every weekday, let's be clear, at 11 a.m. Eastern, make sure you hit the subscribe button because that's what we do here. I also do a bunch of bonus shows, randomly sometimes extra shows that are scheduled, different things. But think of those as like icing on the cake, you know? Yeah. So hit those buttons while you're here.
Apparently this essay inspired it. I did not actually coin it. I was a bit ambivalent about the word because it seems a little more condemnatory of the male of the species than I ever wanted to be categorically. But a wonderful young academic at Berkeley explained to me a couple weeks ago that no, this is a great word. This is an important word. Until we had this word, we all had this experience that we had no way to explain. You'd have to, you didn't have a reference point. You didn't know if it was just you. You didn't know kind of what to do about it, mansplaining this.
Right. Before I heard the word floating around, I would have people come up to me and be like, I just had this experience, and they'd run through the whole thing, and then they just go, men, like there wasn't a way to clearly articulate it. It just, this is why we need language to evolve. Necessity is the mother of innovation. Yeah, we needed a word for this. Even though it's not exclusively for men, but it needs to be there to highlight that intersection of factors. Yeah. Dr. Kip is here saying, damn, I noticed I missed the Amarna Letter show. It has been a week. I feel that. I mean, I probably don't feel that in exactly the same way you feel that, but I definitely feel that. Time is fucking wild, but I won't get into that right now either.
Gives you this kind of handy portmanteau way to go at it. So, that's happened. There's an academic blog called Academic Men Explain Things to Me, on which academic women post their latest tribulations. So we decided, what the hell? It should be a commencement gift. So for people of all genders, and decided to.
And on that note, if you need a commencement gift, I realize it's not actually graduation season. I mean, there are some people who graduate at like the end of January and shit, like an extra semester type of thing, or graduate early, whatever the case may be. But graduation is coming up in just a few months. It's closer than you might think. And if you need a good graduation gift, may I offer you for your consideration these lovely, delightful pride flags. I'm adding more all the time. So if a person isn't their flag isn't available yet, let me know. I'll get on it. I even put the ally flag up there, and everything is available in both flag and sticker form, and they're big stickers. For $6, it's the size of my hand. It's a big freaking sticker. I understand being very, very poor. However, I would also point out that while $30 for a flag, $29.88, is a little bit more than you would pay for a flag that is just the colors because there's a lot more detail. It's also considerably cheaper than other flags that are trying to do the same thing I'm doing, but less well. Specifically, I'm referring to yesterday. I talked about another website that just stole Rachel Lenz's image and is reselling it as a flag for $40. So you get a better flag from the actual artist, and there's more flags available, and it's cheaper. Like, so there's that. And once again, reminder, I'm putting together micro sponsorships to help support other channels and also literally make more money. You know, I need money to eat food and pay bills and things. And so I'm trying very, very hard to make this work. And if I can get more sales and also help other channels at the same time, fuck yes. So if you're interested, or you know a creator who is, have them bug me. I'm easily reachable in many, many, many places. All right, this period of capitalism completed. Let's go back to the interview.
Put it out in this little edition with 6 other essays, 2 of them never published before, from various places, all dealing with feminists and gender politics. So, and it's funny, somebody said to me, "You don't really write about feminism normally, do you?" And I was like, in a way, everything I've ever written is feminist. And Savage Dreams, which came out in 1994, is now this gorgeous new Richard Mizrak photograph on the cover, 20th anniversary edition, price to trade. Thank you, UC Press. You know, is full of really powerful women. And The Far Away Nearby, which is about my relationship with my mother in part, is not particularly explicitly feminist, but it is so implicitly feminist about the things that can destroy a woman's sense of herself and what the consequences.
Speaking of destroying a woman's sense of herself and what's inherently feminist and what's inherently asshole behavior, Dr. Kip mentions the recent thing, which if you're watching in real time just happened. The U.S. men's hockey team won gold medals and then immediately started behaving like sexist assholes, like MAGAs. And I'm not entirely sure it's the Olympics, but I know there have been major sporting events where people have been awarded a medal, immediately acted like assholes, and immediately had their medal stripped for unsportsmanlike conduct. And I kind of wonder if something like that might not be, you know, appropriate in this case. Perhaps. Just throwing that idea out there. Not that, you know, the Olympic Committee is watching my show or anything, but, you know, people know people, and sometimes words get around, you know, like mansplaining. That's a word that got around, isn't it?
Can be, and what happens if you believe the stories they tell you about femininity and what women need to be, and beauty, all the beauty problems. You all know about the beauty problems, right? So, but I could go on forever, but it'd be much better if I just read to you. Men explain things to me. I still don't know why Sally.
Okay, so now she's just going to read the original article, which is what I plan to do next, and I'm tempted to let her do it, except she's very fucking soft. So even though it's her article, I bet you could hear it better if I do it. So we will switch over to that in a moment after we take a short break, reminding us of what the fuck we mean when we say a man is talking like a MAGA-flavored misogynist asshole.
I have a problem with this stuff being normalized across the spectrum, and specifically, like, why push this on kids? Why introduce this to kids?
I am a depraved wretch. I am a great sinner. I'm a worm, completely undeserving of any love or any grace. I'm nothing. I'm nothing.
You're incapable of being a good person. You're an evil person. You're a terrible person. At the core fabric of who you are. That's why we need laws. We need laws because we're bad people. All of us are bad people.
You can't spell Pride Month without demon. PRIDEMONTH.
If we don't know who the women are, because there are just people, then we won't be able to pull the women up to equality with men.
We have to try to limit the harm. And that means reducing or keeping down the number of people who transition. And that's for 2 reasons. One of them is that every one of those people is a person who's been damaged. But the second one is every one of those people is basically you know, a huge problem to a sane world.
Transgenderism must be eradicated.
The LGBT, transgender, grooming our children's minds is a national security threat. We need to hold people for treason, start having some public hearings, and start executing people.
I will use whatever gives me victory. I don't care about the truth, and I don't care about the law. I care about one thing, the control.
But then they rigged the election, and now we won, so I'm going to be your president. Then what happened is they rigged the election, and I became president, so that was a good thing.
I agreed with many, many things you said during, in fact, probably more than most other candidates when you were running for president, but I still would not have voted for you because you're an Indian.
I just want to say I feel good about the Republican Party. I feel good about where we're going as a nation. We're killing all the right people and we're cutting your taxes.
It was actually a tremendous blessing to these children for them to be killed and go to heaven and be with God.
We've been hoodwinked. We've been taken in by an ideology crafted by creeps and then pushed on children.
Stop letting people pressure you into thinking.
If they die, they die.
I want to be ignorant, honestly.
Being a Christian doesn't exclude us from experiencing spiritual dryness.
We're bad people. All of us are bad people.
It's true. And I'll give Ruslan credit. At least he acknowledges the truth of that. So there. All right, let's change sides a little because we don't need to be staring at text so closely. I mean, you can if you want, but like, oh my goodness. Anyhow, all right. So the actual essay, and thank you, those of you who stuck around. Apparently there were a lot of new people who don't know how we roll on this channel, and we're very much surprised by that ad. So thank you for sticking around. All right. Rebecca's essay. I still don't know why Sally and I bothered to go to that party in the forest slope above Aspen. The people were all older than us and dull in a distinguished way. Old enough that we at 40-ish passed as the occasion's young ladies. The house was great, if you like Ralph Lauren-style chalets, a rugged luxury cabin at 9,000 feet complete with elk antlers, lots of killums, and a wood-burning stove. We were preparing to leave when our host said, "No, stay a little longer so I can talk to you." He was an imposing man who'd made a lot of money. He kept us waiting while the other guests drifted out into the summer night and then sat us down at his authentically grainy wood table and said to me, "So, I hear you've written a couple of books." I replied, "Several, actually." This is an experience that I'm sure Dr. Kipp is familiar with. Have you considered writing any books? Oh my goodness. Bree says, "Ember, we can go to this party and be young ladies again." I know, I was thinking that too. I'm like, oh, if I could go to a party and be the young lady. He said, in a way, that you encourage your friend's 7-year-old to describe flute practice. And what are they about? They were actually about quite a few different things, the 6 or 7 out by then, but I began to speak only of the most recent on that summer day in 2003, River of Shadows, the Technological Wild West. My book on the annihilation of time and space in the... I mean, that's the coolest thing about photography, you know? Tangents, I know, tangents. But you control... With photography, you have to do it the other way around. You have to wait. So it's fascinating. Is so cool. But Gister says stop buffering internet. Apparently I'm freezing time over the interweb. Fourth, eyes fixed on the fuzzy far horizon of... Here let me just say that my life is well sprinkled with lovely men, with a long succession of editors who, since I was young, have listened and encouraged and published me with my infinitely generous younger brother and splendid friends, of whom it could be said, like the clerk in the Canterbury Tales I still remember from Mr. Pellin's class on Chaucer, gladly would he learn and gladly teach. Still, there are these other men too. So, Mr. Very Important was going on smugly about this book I should have known when Sally interrupted him to say, "That's her book," or tried to interrupt him anyway. But he just continued on his way. She had to say, "That's her book," 3 or 4 more times before he finally took it in. And then, as if in a 19th century novel, he went ashen. That I was indeed the author of the very important book it turned out he hadn't read, just read about in the New York Times Book Review a few months earlier, so confused the neat categories into which his world was sorted that he was stunned speechless for a moment. Before he began holding forth again, being women, we were politely out of earshot before we started laughing, and we've never really stopped. I like incidents of that sort, when the forces that are usually so sneaky and hard to point out slither out of the grass and are as obvious as, say, an anaconda that's eaten a cow or an elephant turd on the carpet. When River of Shadows came out, some pedant wrote a snarky letter to the New York Times explaining that, though Maybridge had made improvements in camera technology, he'd not made any breakthroughs in photographic chemistry. The guy had no idea what he was talking about. Both Philip Prodger, in his wonderful book on Maybridge, and I had actually researched the subject and made it clear that Maybridge had done something obscure but powerful to the wet plate technology of the time to speed it up amazingly. But letters to the editor don't get fact-checked. And perhaps because the book was about the virile subjects of cinema and technology, the men who knew came out of the woodwork. A British academic wrote into the London Review of Books with all kinds of nitpicking corrections and complaints, all of them from outer space. He carped, for example, that to aggrandize Maybridge's standing, I left out technological predecessors like Henry R. Hale. He'd apparently not read the book all the way to page 202 or checked the index since Hale was there, and his contribution was just not very significant. Surely one of these men has died of embarrassment, but not nearly publicly enough. Yes, guys like this pick up other men's books too. And people of both genders pop up at events to hold forth on irrelevant things and conspiracy theories. But the out confrontational confidence of the totally ignorant is, in my experience, gender. Men explain things to me and other women, whether or not they know what they're talking about. Some men. Every woman knows what I'm talking about. It's the presumption that makes it hard at times for any woman in any field that keeps women from speaking up and from being heard when they dare, that crushes young women into silence by indicating, the way harassment on the street does, that this is not their world. It trains us in self-doubt and self-limitation just as it exercises men's unsupported overconfidence. Once again, a reminder, there's a reason we're talking about this now. Just saying. I wouldn't be surprised if part of the trajectory of American politics since 2001 was shaped by, say, the inability to hear Colleen Rowley the FBI woman who issued those early warnings about Al-Qaeda, and it was certainly shaped by a Bush administration to which you couldn't tell anything, including that Iraq had no links to Al-Qaeda and no WMDs, or that the war was not going to be a cakewalk. Even male experts couldn't penetrate the fortress of their smugness. Arrogance might have had something to do with the war, but the syndrome is a war that nearly every woman faces every day. A war within herself, too, a belief in her superfluity. English is hard, folks. An invitation to silence, one from which a fairly nice career as a writer, with a lot of research and facts correctly deployed, has not entirely freed me. After all, there was a moment there when I was willing to let Mr. Important and his overweening confidence bowl over my more shaky certainty. Don't forget that I've had a lot more confirmation of my right to think and speak than most women. And I've learned that a certain amount of self-doubt is a good tool for correcting, understanding, listening, and progressing. Though too much is paralyzing and total self-confidence produces arrogant idiots like the ones who have governed us since 2001. There's a happy medium between these poles to which the genders have been pushed, a warm equatorial belt of give and take where we should all meet. More extreme versions of our situation exist. For example, those Middle Eastern countries where women's testimony has no legal standing, so that a woman can't testify that she was raped without a male witness to counter the male rapist, which there rarely is. Credibility is a basic survival tool. When I was very young and just beginning to get what feminism was about and why it was necessary, I had a boyfriend whose uncle was a nuclear physicist. One Christmas, he was telling, as though it were a light and amusing subject, how a neighbor's wife in his suburban bomb-making community had come running out of her house naked in the middle of the night, screaming that her husband was trying to kill her. How, I asked, did you know that he wasn't trying to kill her? He explained, patiently, that they were respectable middle-class people. Therefore, her husband trying to kill her was simply not a credible explanation for her fleeing the house yelling that her husband was trying to kill her. That she was crazy, on the other hand. Even getting a restraining order, a fairly new legal tool, requires acquiring the credibility to convince the courts that some guy is a menace and then getting the cops to enforce it. Restraining orders often don't work anyway. Violence is one way to silence people, to deny their voice and their credibility, to assert your right to control over their right to exist. About 3 women a day are murdered by spouses or ex-spouses in the United States. It's one of the main causes of death of pregnant women in the US. At the heart of the struggle of feminism to give rape, date rape, marital rape, domestic violence, and workplace sexual harassment legal standing as crimes has been the necessity of making women credible and audible. I tend to believe that women acquired the status of human beings when these kinds of acts started to be taken seriously, when the big things that stop us and kill us were addressed legally from the mid-1970s on, well after, that is, my birth. The authors. And for anyone about to argue that workplace sexual intimidation isn't a life or death issue, remember that Marine Corps Lance Corporal Maria Lauterbach, age 20, who was apparently killed by her higher-ranking colleague last winter while she was waiting to testify that he raped her. The burned remains of her pregnant body were found in the fire pit in his backyard in December. Being told that categorically, he knows what he's talking about and she doesn't, however minor a part of any given conversation, perpetuates the ugliness of this world and holds back its light. After my book Wanderlust came out in 2000, I found myself better able to resist being bullied out of my own perceptions and interpretations. On 2 occasions around that time, I objected to the behavior of a man, only to be told that the incidents hadn't happened at all as I said, that I was subjective, delusional, overwrought, dishonest. In a nutshell, female. Most of my life, I would have doubted myself and backed down. Having public standing as a writer of history helped me stand my ground, but few women get that boost, and billions of women must be out there on this 6 billion person planet being told that they are not reliable witnesses to their own lives, that the truth is not their property, now or ever. This goes way beyond men explaining things, but it's part of the same archipelago of arrogance. Men explain things to me still, and no man has ever apologized for explaining wrongly things that I know and they don't. Not yet, but according to the actuarial tables, I may have another 40-something years to live, more or less. So it could happen, though I'm not holding my breath. A few years after the idiot in Aspen, I was in Berlin giving a talk when the Marxist writer Tariq Ali invited me out to a dinner that included a male writer and a translator and 3 women a little younger than me who would remain differential and mostly silent throughout the dinner. Tariq was great. Perhaps the translator was peeved that I insisted on playing a modest role in the conversation, but when I said something about how women strike for peace, the extraordinary, little-known anti-nuclear and anti-war group founded in 1961 helped bring down the communist hunting House Committee on Un-American Activities, HUAC. Someone make a note of that. I want to know about this obscure group of anti-nuke people ending the House Un-American Activities Committee. That's the thing I'm very interested in. So remind me. Mr. Very Important Too sneered at me. HUAC, he insisted, didn't exist by the early 1960s, and anyway, no women's group played such a role in HUAC's downfall. His scorn was so withering, his confidence so aggressive, that arguing with him seemed a scary exercise in futility and an invitation to more insults. I think I was at 9 books at that point, including one that drew from primary documents and interviews about women strike for peace. But explaining men still assume I am, in some sort of obscene impregnation of metaphor, an empty vessel to be filled with their wisdom and knowledge. A Freudian would claim to know what they have and I lack, but intelligence is not situated in the crotch. Even if you can write one of Virginia Woolf's long, mellifluous musical sentences about the subtle subjugation of women in the snow with your Willie. Back in my hotel room, I Googled a bit, and I found that Eric Bentley, in his definitive history of the House Committee on Un-American Activities, credited Women's Strike for Peace with striking the crucial blow in the fall of HUAC's Bastille in the early 1960s. So I opened an essay for The Nation with this interchange, in part as a shout out to one of the more unpleasant men who have explained things to me. Dude, if you're reading this, you're a carbuncle on the face of humanity and an obstacle to civilization. Feel the shame. The battle with men who explain things has trampled down many women of my generation, of the up-and-coming generation we need so badly, here and in Pakistan and Bolivia and Java, not to speak of the countless women who came before me and were not allowed into the laboratory or the library or the conversation or the revolution or even the category human. After all, Women's Strike for Peace was founded by women who were tired of making the coffee and doing the typing and not having any voice or decision-making role in the anti-nuclear movement of the 1950s. Most women fight wars on two fronts, one for whatever the putative topic is, and one simply for the right to speak, to have ideas, to be acknowledged, to be in possession of facts and truths, to have value, to be a human being. Things have certainly gotten better, but this war won't end in my lifetime. I'm still fighting it, for myself certainly, but also for all those younger women who have something to say in the hope that they will get to say it. Thank you all so much for joining me. This is a fascinating one. There's a lot of layers to this sort of thing. But I think Rebecca Solnit pretty much nailed it. Why spoil the moment? We do have a lot more to say about women and the role of things in society in upcoming episodes. So I hope you stick around for that. If you're still here, you must enjoy what we're doing. Please take a second to make sure you're subscribed, because it does help the channel, and I appreciate it very much. And you have a better chance of getting notifications that way. Once again, we're here every weekday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. I just scheduled the shows for next week, so we've got lots more coming. And as always, remember, you don't have to pretend entire groups of people aren't human, don't have value, aren't as important as your ego. Because whether we're talking about religion or culture or anything else, you're better than being an asshole. Toodles. Thanks to all our patrons and top-level members for January. Miranda, Karen Butcher, Jessica the Trans Metal Alchemist, Robin Webster, Maya Adkisson, Jimmy Tux, Ian Chen, Lilith, Ember Lynn, The Barely Bearable Atheist, Eric Wander, Jason Jacoby, Lil of All Trades, Deviant Outcast, Secular Feelinist, Kelly King, the Detroit Atheist Queen, Geo Sam, Thriver Scapegoat, The Godless Engineer, Why Because Weed Bro, and Katie Bluebird. And you can add your name here next month by signing up at patreon.com/betterthanember, or by joining Emberships here on YouTube at the Cinder level, which also includes all the custom emojis, tons of member-exclusive content, member-only live streams, and a bunch of other stuff. I deeply appreciate all the supporters who keep this channel going. Thank you so much. Because of you, we're building a wonderful community that I'm very proud of.